the author of this text is Dodrupchen Jigme Tenpe Nyima. The first Dodrupchen Rinpoche had 8 Dharma heirs, and I think Tenpe Nyima, that is Dodrupchen, in fact, is the eldest. And out of the 8, there's also Sarah Condro's husband and a few others. He has a few of excellent texts written, such as outline commentary on Gyuha Tantra. I wanted to give teaching on it. There were people who translated it already, but I never really had an opportunity. And there are some of the Terma text teachings. Some of the Western universities, in fact, I've given the teachings in some of those universities. He was born in 1865 and died in the year 1926 and lived for 62 years. His name appeared in the biography of Mipa Rinpoche. He is one of the most important and most helpful disciple of Mipa Rinpoche, a very great disciple. And Phuntsok Rinpoche once taught that there was once Pachu Rinpoche said that the teaching of Nyima is quite hopeful. Why is that? Because Tenpe Nyima give teaching of the way of the Bodhisattva at the age of 8, which then signifies the accomplishment of teaching. And then another teacher, Pamadudum from Nyarong, attained rainbow body in this lifetime, which then signified the prosperity of realization of the Dharma. So many great masters give great praise to this author. And I've read lots of his dohas. His dohas or vajrasanas compared to Mipa Rinpoche and so on, I think it's rather a bit difficult to understand in terms of the wording. And compared to the other dohas, I think this particular text that is transforming suffering and happiness into enlightenment is easier to understand. Anyhow, this author is in fact very famous. Many great masters abroad or domestically really likes his teachings in terms of esoteric, exoteric teachings, and as well as his dohas and his commentaries and so on. I believe there's a publication from the Tibetan publication. There are about 6 or 7 volumes. Then the translator is me. I started translating it on the 21st of February this year, when it was in fact the most severe of the pandemic. I finished translating on 5th of March when everyone was really anxious, and I exactly used that situation and transformed the happiness and suffering into the path of practice. And I then was in retreat and I stayed indoor. It was really great. The day I finished translating, the death toll in China has already rose to 3,000. People were very anxious, very stressed, and I translated it in such kind of social background, and I also did a little bit editing and so on. So that's the whole background of translation. So now let's look at the homage. Homage, I pay homage to noble Avalokiteshvara, recalling his qualities. The later part is a little bit different, so the Chinese translation may be a little bit different. forever youthful, forever joyful at the happiness of others, and plunged into sorrow whenever they suffer. You have fully realized great compassion with all its qualities, and abide without a care for your own happiness or suffering. Why Avalokiteshvara? Because Avalokiteshvara always practice the always practice transforming the Tonglen practice. So that is the bodhisattva of great compassion. And to such a bodhisattva, the author pays its homage. And this kind of to this kind of bodhisattva who practice by transform or have this heart of practicing Tonglen, the author pays homage. The reason of paying homage to Avalokiteshvara is because also he sees the happiness of sentient beings and feels happy for them, and feels saddened when sees the suffering of sentient beings. And that is the characteristic or the merit of the great compassionate Avalokiteshvara. In the nature of Avalokiteshvara, he has already eradicated all the solid suffering and happiness and abide in such kind of a state, and that is very different than those of the mundane beings. The mundane beings would grasp onto happiness and feel really suffered when there's pain and obstacles, but when others encounter it, they don't really feel it at all. In the Vimalakirti Sutra, we learned that when mundane beings see other people happy, they feel upset, and when they see other people suffer, they would feel happy. And that is in fact exact opposite of the bodhisattvas. The mundane beings would rather to gain happiness for themselves. They don't want suffering for themselves at all. But when it is for the other sentient beings, it is exactly different. When they see other sentient beings suffering, the mundane beings would feel very happy about it. For example, during the pandemic, let it be other countries, other ethnic, if there are lots of death toll and when others are encountering lots of suffering, there are people who take delights in others' misfortune. They feel that they've earned it. In fact, that's how majority of mundane beings feel. That's the mentality of it. That's a common mentality. But a bodhisattva is not a common mundane being. The bodhisattvas don't want others to suffer, even if they cannot benefit or help them. They would rather to wish other people to be happy. So that is why the author first pay homage to Avalokiteshvara first, because Avalokiteshvara already attained equanimity, or even taking others before themselves. So to this kind of realization, the author then praised and pays homage. If bodhisattvas are exactly like us, who feels upset when during suffering, who who look at other people's suffering and take delight in it, then that kind of quality don't really worth any homage at all. We need to pay homage or prostrate to the ones who have certain merits. In fact, Avalokiteshvara's merit has already surpassed us from all different ways. Unlike mundane being would feel afraid would pay homage or would honor their leaders or their supervisors due to fear. In fact, Avalokiteshvara surpassed us in so many different ways. Therefore, it is natural that we would pay homage to him because of his virtue and because of his merit. And while you're doing this homage, while you're prostrating to that quality, you should also think about how Avalokiteshvara is such a great bodhisattva, and may I please also attain the same merit to benefit sentient beings. May I also attain such kind of realization so that I can benefit sentient beings and share the happiness to all sentient beings, so that at least eventually I'll be able to attain the same enlightenment as Avalokiteshvara. So while you recite this homage, you should think in such a way. In one hand, you should recite it, and reciting as a homage, and in your mind, you should also think about how great Avalokiteshvara is, and I should prostrate and pay homage. And this is paying homage in the mind, and then in terms of body, you can visualize or you can prostrate. That's also another way of paying homage. This is how we follow the previous great masters and great practitioners and pay homage in the same way, and eventually we will be able to gain such a kind of merit, both in the worldly and relative and ultimate way. We should practice in such a way.